All right, so let me tell you one little fact about epidemics that you should know about. When you have a communicable disease, those diseases have that name because you can transmit it from one person to another just by being in the same room or touching the same doorknob or sharing the same fork or whatever. But different diseases are more or less communicable, meaning more or less able to be spread from one person to another. And the basic number we use to measure this, and this will also help, I think, hopefully put this in context with our current problem, is what's called the R naught. The R naught is that R0, or basic reproduction number. What that means is if a person gets the disease, how many people on average do they infect? Now, if a person infects one other person, that would be called an R naught of 1, and that means one person would transmit it to one other person, and then that person eventually would transmit it to one other person. That would allow an epidemic to kind of coast along at the same numbers that it has at the start. If the R naught is big, it's going to infect more people more quickly. If the R naught is less than 1, it will probably peter out because for instance, if it's 0.5, that means each person infects a half a person. So it takes 2 people to infect one, and eventually that'll die out. Now, the MERS infection, which was present a few years ago, about 15 years ago, that had an R naught of about 0.8, and it did die out pretty quickly, thank God. So one infected person didn't even replace himself when he or she got the disease. It infected a little less than one person in the future. Whereas the flu that we suffer with every year in this country, and many, many thousands of people die every year in this country and around the world with the flu, that is an R naught of about 1.5. So if one person gets it, on average, about 1.5 people will get it. So that means the numbers are going to increase and increase if nothing else stops it, like a flu shot. That's why the flu shot's important, because the R naught of influenza is above 1. Ebola is even worse. It has an R naught of 2, so it's even more infectious than the flu. And you know how easy it is to catch the flu, so Ebola was even more. And that's why that could have spread easily throughout the whole world. Thank God it was caught early, because 50% of the people who get Ebola die from it. Not like a half of 1% like we have with COVID. The SARS infection has a R naught of 3.5. It's real easy for that to spread. Mumps. In the old days, before we had the mumps vaccine, if one kid got mumps, he would infect on average 4.5 other kids. So you can see why it was almost impossible to control mumps unless you have a vaccine. Rubella, the name for German measles, has an even a higher R naught of 6. So rubella just swarms through a population, zips through it so quickly because one person will infect on average 6. Smallpox, thank God, mainly in the history books nowadays, but not totally, has also a very, very high R naught of 6. But what's the world record holder for R naught? Anybody know what disease actually has by far the biggest R naught? In other words, it's the most contagious disease we've ever seen on any history book.
And you can type your answers in, everyone.
Any answers there, Deborah?
Bubonic Plague.
That's a good one. It's a good one. Actually, bubonic plague is not even contagious at all.
And I think it's polio.
Wow, that's another good one. But actually, it's not. But good. These are good choices. Anyhow, it's measles.
Oh, wow.
Good old measles. And look at how off the scale it is. One kid gets measles will infect on average 16 people in the community. If you're wondering why us doctors are so adamant about kids getting vaccinated for measles, you'll see is that because if you don't, there will be tons and tons of deaths. Because measles is an annoying disease for a lot of people, but it kills a fair number of people too. And once it starts spreading through a population with an R naught of 16, it's going to really spread like mad. I left one blank spot here on the left here, and that's for our current plague, which is the COVID. And just hopefully this puts in context that the R naught for COVID, as far as we can tell right now with the early evidence, it's about 2.5. So if one person gets infected, about 2.5 other people will. So you can see why it's zooming along, why it's zoomed through the U.S. population, why it's zoomed through China, and how hard it is to stop it. Even though that's true, imagine if it had an R value of 6, or if it had an R value of 16, we'd be much worse.